Welcome back to Real Life Documentary, a channel that is determined to bring to you all life tragic stories and happenings. Please support us by subscribing to our channel as you watch. Now on today's episode. At the heart of this tragic tale are three individuals whose lives became deeply intertwined. Veronica Hartley, a vibrant local real estate agent with a seemingly perfect life. Her husband, Damian Hartley, the town's well-loved high school chemistry teacher, and Fiona Blackwood, Veronica's best friend and a reserved librarian with hidden complexities. Outwardly, they appeared to embody the finest aspects of Centerville, dedicated, friendly, and actively involved in their community. However, beneath the surface of their shared social events and community engagements, tensions began to brew. A seemingly harmless plan, driven by one woman's insecurity, set off a chain of events that spiraled into passion, betrayal, and ultimately death. Veronica and Damian Hartley's love story was the kind of romance that people in small towns talk about for years. They met on a scorching summer day in 2010 during Centerville's annual 4th of July picnic. Veronica, then known as Veronica Caldwell, was working at the lemonade stand, her hair glowing in the sun. Damian, newly arrived in town for his teaching job, was instantly captivated. Their relationship quickly blossomed, filled with stolen glances across busy rooms, late-night conversations on Veronica's porch swing, and dreams of a future brimming with love and happiness. Just 6 months after they met, Damian proposed at sunset on the Mill Road Bridge, offering Veronica a modest diamond ring. Their wedding the following spring, held in the town square, was the highlight of the year. From the outside, the Hartleys appeared to have everything. Damian quickly earned a reputation as a beloved teacher, inspiring students with his enthusiasm for science, and winning over even the most difficult teens with his gentle nature. Veronica's career in real estate soared, her charm and sharp business sense making her the top agent in Centerville. They bought a charming home on Maple Street, complete with a white picket fence and a large backyard, perfect for the family they hoped to start. Their house became the center of social life, hosting summer barbecues and holiday parties. To their friends and neighbors, Veronica and Damian were the ideal couple, a testament to true love. However, as the years went by, cracks began to appear in their perfect image. Despite their efforts and medical treatments, the children they longed for never came, and the struggle with infertility started to strain their marriage. Behind closed doors, quiet arguments replaced the laughter they once shared, and a growing distance emerged. Veronica immersed herself in work, taking on more clients and staying late at the office, while Damian found refuge in his school lab, spending long hours on experiments and tutoring students. Outwardly, they continued to appear as a strong couple, but those close to them started noticing the tension. As their 5th anniversary neared, the cracks in their seemingly perfect marriage grew harder to hide. Veronica was increasingly overwhelmed by doubts and insecurities. She began questioning whether Damian's late nights at school were truly work-related, or if there was someone else involved. The seed of suspicion quickly grew in her mind, fueled by her imagination. Fiona Blackwood arrived in Centerville during the summer of 2015, taking over as the head librarian after Mrs. Perkins retired. Fiona's reserved nature made her stand out in a town full of outgoing blonde Midwesterners. Initially, she kept to herself, more comfortable with her books than with the constant social events in Centerville. Veronica was the first to reach out to Fiona, visiting her at the library with a welcome basket filled with local treats. Something about Fiona's shy smile and sharp wit struck a chord with Veronica, and soon, they became inseparable. They bonded over their mutual love of mystery novels, frustrations with small-town politics, and shared dreams of adventures beyond Centerville. As Veronica's marriage to Damian became more strained, she found herself confiding in Fiona, who quickly became her trusted confidant. Fiona always listened patiently, offering comforting words to soothe Veronica's growing fears. For Fiona, who had never had many close friends, Veronica's friendship was a lifeline in a town where she still felt like an outsider. Fiona, who had grown up in foster care, had never known the security of a loving family. Her own romantic experiences were marked by brief and painful relationships, leaving her hesitant to open her heart. She quietly envied the Hartleys' seemingly perfect relationship, even as she listened to Veronica's growing doubts. Alone in her small apartment above the library, Fiona occasionally imagined what it would be like to experience a love like Veronica and Damian's. She quickly pushed those thoughts aside, feeling guilty for even considering them. Veronica was her best friend and Damian was off-limits. Little did Fiona know that her loyalty to Veronica would soon face the ultimate test, one that would challenge everything she believed about love, friendship, and herself. As Veronica and Damian's 6th wedding anniversary approached, Veronica's suspicions about Damian's fidelity reached an all-time high. Every late night at school, every text message he quickly hid, and every distracted moment in their conversations became, in her mind, signs of his possible unfaithfulness. One warm August evening, as Veronica sat alone on her porch swing with a glass of white wine, scrolling through her phone, she stumbled upon an article about loyalty testing. The article described how people would hire actors or ask friends to flirt with their partners to test their commitment. The idea took root in Veronica's mind and soon seemed like the only way to resolve her doubts. The next day, Veronica invited Fiona over for coffee. Sitting in the kitchen with the scent of freshly baked muffins filling the air, Veronica hesitantly confessed her fears about Damian's loyalty. She shocked Fiona by making a bold and troubling request. She wanted Fiona to test Damian by trying to seduce him. Fiona was stunned, almost spilling her coffee. She immediately voiced her objections, reassuring Veronica of Damian's love. However, Veronica persisted, outlining a detailed plan where Fiona would flirt with Damian and possibly even kiss him, insisting it would either confirm her trust or expose his infidelity. Fiona strongly opposed the idea, pointing out the ethical concerns and the damage this plan could cause to Damian's trust and their friendship. But despite her misgivings, Veronica, desperate for reassurance, begged Fiona to go through with it, invoking their deep bond. After a tense internal struggle, Fiona reluctantly agreed, but she made it clear she believed this was a serious mistake. The atmosphere in the kitchen turned heavy as the two women contemplated the consequences of their decision. As Fiona left the Hartley house that day, a sense of foreboding weighed on her. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had just agreed to something that would irrevocably alter all of their lives. And soon she would realize how true that feeling was. The plan was set in motion during Centerville's annual fall festival in September. The town square was buzzing with the sound of laughter, music, and the smell of funnel cakes and barbecue. Fairy lights twinkled overhead, casting a warm glow over the festive scene. Fiona arrived later than usual, with her hair styled in loose waves and her eyes highlighted by subtle makeup. She wore a flowing sundress, a noticeable change from her usual modest attire. As she navigated the lively crowd, she spotted Damian at the dunking booth, his wet t-shirt clinging to his lean frame as he playfully bantered with the onlookers. As the students took turns trying to dunk him, the festival continued to bustle around them. Fiona steeled herself and approached Damian's booth, greeting him with an uncharacteristically flirtatious tone that caught him off guard. Damian responded politely, but his first question was about Veronica's whereabouts, much to Fiona's disappointment. Undeterred, Fiona pressed on with her act, hinting that she was looking for excitement that evening. Although Damian remained friendly, he seemed puzzled by her unusual behavior. Over the next hour, Fiona persisted in her attempts to flirt with him, exaggerating her laughter, touching his arm lightly, but each time Damian maintained his polite demeanor, though his growing discomfort became more obvious. Unexpectedly, Fiona found herself enjoying Damian's company more than she anticipated, noticing qualities in him she had overlooked before. This realization only deepened her guilt about the situation. In a final bold move, she suggested they meet for coffee, just the two of them. Damian's response was immediate and firm. He gently rejected her advance, reminding her of his marriage to her best friend Veronica. Feeling confused and uneasy, Damian excused himself and walked away, leaving Fiona alone to grapple with her emotions. Fiona felt a complex mix of relief and disappointment. While she was glad that Damian had stayed loyal to Veronica, she couldn't ignore the unexpected twinge of regret. As she made her way home, her thoughts kept returning to Damian, realizing that the experience had changed how she viewed him in ways she hadn't anticipated. In the days following the fall festival, both Damian and Fiona struggled with their emotions. Damian, troubled by Fiona's behavior, began to see her differently, noticing things he had never paid attention to before. The way her eyes crinkled when she laughed, her grace, and her vast knowledge on various subjects. Meanwhile, Fiona was consumed with guilt over her deception. She knew she should tell Veronica about Damian's loyalty, but something held her back. Each time she thought about that night, she didn't just remember her awkward attempts at flirtation. She also recalled the genuine connection she had felt with Damian, a connection that complicated everything. Their paths continued to cross frequently in the small town, each encounter charged with a new and unsettling tension. At the grocery store, their hands brushed while reaching for the same apple, sending a jolt through both of them. At a school board meeting, their eyes met from across the room, lingering for a moment too long before they both looked away, flustered. Damian immersed himself in work, staying at school later than ever, while Fiona busied herself with reorganizing the entire fiction section at the library. Yet, no matter how hard they tried to avoid each other, fate seemed to keep bringing them together. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, everything changed during an unexpected encounter at the library. As Fiona was closing up for the day, Damian arrived to return some overdue books. Their hands touched during the exchange, and suddenly the air between them became thick with tension and unspoken emotions. Unable to hold back, Damian confessed that he couldn't stop thinking about her, his voice heavy with emotion. Despite Fiona's protests, she felt an undeniable pull toward him. For a brief moment, they teetered on the edge of a life-altering decision. Then, as if caught in an irresistible force, they surrendered to their desires, sharing a passionate kiss. The realization of what they had done hit them both immediately, and they pulled apart, shocked. Fiona was overwhelmed with guilt and dismay, while Damian, though conflicted, admitted that he wanted more. Standing there among the bookshelves, they had crossed a line that would forever change their lives and relationships. The weight of their actions and the consequences for their futures loomed heavy, marking the start of a dangerous and potentially destructive path. In the weeks that followed, Damian and Fiona's affair blossomed in the shadows of Centerville. They met in secret, stealing moments whenever and wherever they could. The back room of the library became their hidden refuge, a place where they could be their true selves, away from the watchful eyes of the town and the constant burden of their guilt. Their meetings were a blend of passion and intellectual connection, where they spent hours discussing books, debating philosophy, and sharing their deepest hopes and dreams. Damian found in Fiona a kindred spirit, someone who challenged him intellectually and understood his passion for knowledge. Fiona, in turn, discovered a side of Damian she had never imagined, his sensitivity and complexity drawing her in deeper each day. Yet, their stolen joy was always shadowed by the bitter sting of betrayal. Every kiss, every secret touch reminded them of the trust they were breaking. Veronica's face, with her unknowing smile, haunted them both, a constant presence in their minds. As the seasons changed, Damian and Fiona found themselves sinking deeper into their affair, despite repeated declarations that they should stop. Their feelings for one another only intensified, making the secret they carried more and more difficult to bear. Damian and Fiona's affair had grown so intense that they began envisioning a future together. Their conversations, once filled with uncertainty, turned into more concrete plans. One snowy evening, as they found solace in each other's company, Damian suggested they leave Centerville and start anew in a different place, far from the secrets and lies of their current lives. The idea thrilled Fiona, but she couldn't ignore the consequences this decision would have for Veronica. Damian admitted that while his actions would cause her pain, he felt an obligation to be truthful about his love for Fiona. For the first time, they openly declared their love for each other, solidifying their commitment to a life together. With this decision, they began actively planning their escape from Centerville. They researched new cities and job opportunities, imagining a future where they could live openly as a couple. However, the looming reality of the heartbreak they would cause, particularly to Veronica, cast a bittersweet shadow over their dreams. Unbeknownst to them, the delicate web of lies and betrayal they had spun was on the verge of unraveling. As Damian and Fiona's affair deepened, Veronica grew increasingly isolated. The loyalty test she had orchestrated had backfired in ways she couldn't have predicted. While she remained unaware of the full extent of the betrayal, she sensed that something was horribly wrong. Damian's behavior had changed, subtle but noticeable. He was distant, often lost in thought, and his late nights at school were becoming more frequent. When he was home, he seemed distracted, his responses vague and non-committal. Fiona, too, had become more elusive, Their weekly coffee dates were frequently cancelled, and when they did meet, Fiona seemed nervous and preoccupied. She avoided eye contact and quickly changed the subject whenever Veronica mentioned Damian. At first, Veronica tried to convince herself that she was being paranoid, that her insecurities were clouding her judgment. But as the weeks passed, her suspicions became harder to dismiss. One evening, while doing laundry, she found a long hair on Damian's shirt, a hair that was not her own. Another time, she overheard him speaking in hushed tones on the phone, only for him to quickly hang up when she entered the room. The final blow came when Veronica decided to surprise Damian at school one afternoon with lunch. But he wasn't in his classroom or the science lab. When she asked a passing student, they mentioned seeing Mr. Hartley heading towards the library. With her heart pounding, Veronica made her way to the library. Through the window, she saw Damian and Fiona standing close together, their heads bent in intimate conversation. As she watched in horror, Damian reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind Fiona's ear, his hand lingering on her cheek. In that single moment, Veronica's world shattered. The truth that Veronica had been avoiding finally crashed over her, devastating her with the realization that her husband and her best friend were having an affair. The shock and guilt overwhelmed her, knowing that her own actions had set everything in motion. Fighting back tears, she fled the school, her mind racing with the implications of what she had just witnessed. That evening, the tension reached a boiling point. Veronica waited for Damian to come home, and when he arrived, she confronted him about the affair, having seen him and Fiona together at the library. Caught off guard, Damian tried to explain, but before he could say much, their confrontation was interrupted by Fiona's unexpected arrival. Fiona had come to confess everything, unaware that Veronica already knew. The situation escalated quickly. Consumed by anger and betrayal, Veronica lunged at Fiona. Damian stepped in, trying to defuse the situation, but in the heat of the moment, Veronica revealed her own secret, the loyalty test she had orchestrated using Fiona. Both Damian and Fiona were shocked by this revelation, adding yet another layer of betrayal to the tangled web they had woven. As the full extent of their deceptions unraveled, the atmosphere became charged with anger, guilt, and deep emotional pain. Veronica, devastated upon realizing that Damian and Fiona had planned to leave together, reacted with intense anguish, violently throwing a vase against the wall. The scene left the three of them standing amidst the wreckage, both physical and emotional, each grappling with the consequences of their actions and the uncertainty of what lay ahead. Their seemingly perfect lives had been shattered beyond repair. Veronica, now eerily calm, confronted Damian and Fiona once more about their plans to run away together. Damian tried to explain his feelings, but every word only deepened Veronica's pain and fury. Fiona, racked with guilt, apologized, but in doing so, inadvertently shifted some of the blame onto Veronica, reminding her that the loyalty test had set this tragedy in motion. The damage was done, and the three of them stood in the aftermath of their broken lives, unsure of what to do next. Veronica's violent reaction to Fiona's accidental blame-shifting sparked an explosive outburst. Veronica lunged at Fiona, but Damian quickly intervened, restraining her. In her struggle, Veronica scratched Damian's face. In the chaos, Veronica broke free and advanced toward Fiona, who, retreating in fear, tripped over a rug. As Fiona fell, she instinctively grabbed onto Veronica, sending both of them crashing into the heavy oak bookcase that lined one wall of the living room. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Then, with a sickening creak, the bookcase began to tilt. Damian, seeing what was about to happen, lunged forward with a cry of warning, but it was too late. The bookcase toppled over, crushing both women beneath its weight. The sound of splintering wood and shattering glass filled the air, followed by a deafening, awful silence. Damian stood paralyzed by shock, staring at the pile of debris where Veronica and Fiona had been moments earlier. The horror of the scene rooted him to the spot, but then, driven by desperation, he began frantically pulling away books and broken shelves. As he worked, his hands became coated in something warm and sticky: blood. So much blood. Suddenly, a faint moan came from beneath the wreckage. Someone was still alive. Damian, with renewed urgency, continued digging, but as he uncovered more of the scene, a horrifying truth dawned on him. Only one of them had survived. In the dim light of the room, Damian finally saw the extent of the carnage. Veronica lay still, her eyes open but lifeless, a deep gash across her forehead from where she had struck a shelf. Beside her, Fiona stirred weakly, her hair matted with blood. Faced with the unimaginable consequences of the night's events, Damian was consumed by a desperate decision. He couldn't lose them both. Trembling, Damian checked for a pulse on Veronica. Though he already knew the truth, she was gone. Overcome by shock and panic, Damian made a choice that went against every moral principle he held. Operating in a daze, he cleaned the scene as best he could, removing broken items and rearranging the furniture to obscure the signs of the struggle. Under the cover of night, he carried Veronica's body to his car, determined to hide what had happened. The drive to Willow Creek was the longest and most agonizing of Damian's life. Every shadow seemed to conceal a witness. Every noise felt like the wail of approaching sirens. He was trapped in a nightmare of his own making, haunted by the weight of what he had done and the guilt of what was yet to come. When Damian finally reached the old Mill Road Bridge, he hesitated only for a moment before consigning his wife's body to the murky waters below. Returning home, he found Fiona semi-conscious on the couch where he had left her. Together, they constructed a story. Veronica had stormed out after an argument, taking some clothes and her car. They claimed they thought she needed time to cool off and would report her missing the following morning if she hadn't returned. As dawn broke over Centerville, Detective Elias Reeves received a call about a missing person. Little did he know that this seemingly routine report would unravel into one of the most complex and disturbing cases of his career. Over the following weeks, as search parties combed the area and posters of Veronica's smiling face appeared all over town, Damian and Fiona clung to their fabricated story, and to each other. But as the investigation intensified and inconsistencies in their account surfaced, both realized that the truth they had tried so hard to bury was clawing its way to the surface. Detective Elias Reeves was a man who prided himself on his ability to read people. In his 20 years on the force, he had developed an almost uncanny sense for detecting lies. From the moment he first interviewed Damian Hartley and Fiona Blackwood, his instincts told him something was off. The investigation into Veronica Hartley's disappearance proceeded methodically. Reeves and his team combed through cell phone records, interviewed friends and colleagues, and meticulously reconstructed the events leading up to the night Veronica disappeared. At first, Damian and Fiona's story seemed plausible. Several people confirmed seeing Veronica upset in the days leading up to her disappearance. Her car was missing from the driveway, supporting their account. However, as days turned into weeks, cracks began to form in their narrative. The breakthrough came when a teenager fishing off the Mill Road Bridge hooked onto something heavy. To his horror, he reeled in a waterlogged purse containing Veronica's driver's license. This discovery shifted the investigation's focus. Soon dive teams were scouring Willow Creek. As the net tightened around them, Damian and Fiona began to unravel. Racked with guilt and unable to sleep, Fiona became increasingly erratic. During her third interview with Detective Reeves, she broke down, confessing to the affair but insisting Veronica's death had been an accident. Damian, confronted with Fiona's partial confession, finally crumbled under the weight of his lies. In a grueling 12-hour interrogation, he revealed everything. From Veronica's ill-conceived loyalty test to the tragic accident and his panicked decision to cover it up. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when Veronica's body was recovered from Willow Creek. The autopsy confirmed that her death was caused by blunt force trauma, consistent with the falling bookcase. In the end, both Damian and Fiona were found guilty of involuntary manslaughter and conspiracy to conceal a death. The judge, while acknowledging the accidental nature of Veronica's death, condemned their actions afterward. They were each sentenced to 15 years in prison. As the gavel fell, sealing their fates, a collective exhale seemed to pass through Centerville. The tragedy had shaken the town to its core, shattering the illusion of small-town innocence and leaving a community forever changed.